was a professional footballer for 20 years. I was taught to head a football and practiced sometimes over 100 times a day in training.
Alan Shearer, who else?
Never ever did I think heading footballs could be dangerous for me.
The new research which points to risks for professional footballers.
Findings will fuel concerns that players' brains are being permanently damaged.
3 of the surviving members of England's 1966 World Cup winning team suffering from dementia.
I know ex-footballers that have had this.
As a footballer, you don't expect to die at 59 of brain damage.
Is there a link because you head a football?
It's a disgrace. How they could cover it up.
I want to find out. I want to learn. I'm not sure how I'll feel. I'll be very nervous.
Each time the ball is coming in contact with the head, there's just that little bit more damage.
I don't know what I'm going to find out. People may be scared to find out some answers. You've got 50,000 members. Do we know how many of those have dementia?
No, we don't.
I'm asking the questions that should have been answered many, many years ago. Could the beautiful game be dangerous? I'm Alan Shearer. I've been in football all my life. I've got to say that nothing quite beats the days of being out there. That's what I always dreamed of. Playing at the top, playing for my country, and above all, scoring goals. I scored 260 Premier League goals, a fifth of them with my head, which must put me at risk if there is science behind the headlines about dementia and football. And if there is scientific proof, should I be talking about the game I love in the way I do? He's a good, honest centre-half, and it was an excellent header and won the game. For every goal I scored with a header in a game, I must have practiced it 1,000 times in training. Just like Jeff Astle did. He was good enough to play up front for England, but he was best loved at West Bromwich Albion.
Astle! Jeff Astle has achieved the record. He's scored in every round of the FA Cup.
He was a great header of the ball and scored 174 goals. The Baggies fans called him the king.
Hello, Jeff.
Hello, David.
Home, they'll be thinking about us when we are far away. I'm home.
Jeff died in 2002 at the age of 59. At his inquest, the coroner said he died of dementia, brought on by years of heading a football. The first time such a connection had officially been made. So I've come to the West Midlands to meet Jeff's daughter, Dawn. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks very much. Lovely to meet you.
And you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fabulous, eh?
Brilliant. I like the way they've got the 9
Number
in the
9,
crown.
special number
Yeah.
9. So tell us about your dad when you first noticed something wasn't quite right.
Well, he was nearly 55 and my son was born and he couldn't remember his name. And he kept saying, what's his name again? And I said, it's Matthew, Dad, and it's not like an unusual name or anything. And I just kept thinking, why can't I remember his name? He suddenly came out one day and said, is my mum still alive? And I thought, like, what? She's been dead like 17, 18 years. And I thought, what's he keep saying these weird things for? And it was really hard for Mum to get him to go to the doctors because, as I say, he didn't think there was anything wrong. She got him to go in the end to the doctors. All the time he was in with the doctor, he was still glaring at Mum as if to say, why am I here? And that's when, I suppose, your life sort of changed forever then, because they said, you know, we're really sorry, but we think Jeff's got early onset dementia.
And then how difficult were the next 3 or 4 years? Take your time.
I know. It was the most devastating, brutal thing I've ever seen in my life. It used to kill me to go and see him. He'd try and get out of a moving car, you're a nervous wreck around him. He would eat things you're not supposed to eat. He'd just go into the fridge and get a big scoop of butter and add it with his hand and put it in his mouth, and my dad had impeccable table manners. Yeah. It was devastating to see him just completely change. He looked like Dad in the first few years, but when the disease really took a hold on him, the difference in how he looked, he was 59 when he died and he looked 159. Right. And it just killed us.
At the inquest today, the coroner heard from medical experts that the damage to Mr. Astle's brain was the result of repeated minor trauma, probably caused by heading a heavy football.
Pathologist who examined Dad's brain described how badly damaged it was. There was trauma right the way through it. And that's when he said it was the repeated heading of footballs that he believed had caused all this trauma over a period of years. The ruling was industrial disease, and so in other words, Dad's job had killed him. And it was a landmark decision. And it wasn't until 2014, when his brain was re-examined and it was found that he didn't have Alzheimer's, he had CTE, or boxer's brain. That's when we wanted to know why. Yeah. You know, my dad was a footballer, how did he end up with boxer's brain?
So you're absolutely convinced that heading a football definitely had something to do...
Definitely.
...with your...
Absolutely, definitely.
Before I spoke with Dawn, I was aware of the Jeff Astle situation. But it's only now I realise that Dawn and her family have been through sheer hell. Now, I've got to try and understand this a lot more because Dawn was mentioning boxer's brain, CTE, dementia. How on earth this can be involved or linked in any way with football or heading a football. Jeff's is not an isolated case. Studies by University College London have revealed CTE in 4 more footballers' brains. I need answers, so I'm travelling to Glasgow to meet Dr. Willie Stewart, the pathologist who found the disease in Jeff Astle's brain. Can you just explain dementia, CTE?
Great questions.
Yeah.
So, dementia is where you've got a loss of normal brain function. Your memory is affected, sometimes your personality is affected, and it can progress to other systems affected as well.
Right.
So it's a very loose term. There's lots and lots of different types of dementia. People are really familiar with Alzheimer's disease, but there are many other types of dementia too. And this one that we are particularly interested in is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, much easier to say. And that's been around for an awful long time. We used to recognise it and see it fairly regularly in former boxers, but actually it could be a footballer's brain or it could be a rugby player's brain. It was a realisation that you didn't have to be a boxer to get this pathology, that actually it was exposure to brain injury and impacts that was the problem.
Is that what you found in Jeff Astle's brain?
Yeah.
CTE is a form of dementia that can be found only after death. So I'm going to be looking at samples of brains that have been removed. Hope I'm not squeamish.
And just it. Thank you. What we have here is I've got 3 recent cases. You're looking a bit...
I'm just frowning, that's
perplexed. 3 recent cases of dementia. They've all been dissected, so they're in bits, but just to let you see what we're dealing with. That is somebody who's dementia who didn't participate in sport, wasn't a sports person. This is football, this is rugby. The important thing here is that even when they've got dementia, there are very limited clues we have that allow us to say what kind of dementia they might have had. They're all a bit shrunken. They all show signs of damage in different ways. And when we're talking about CTE, or head injury specific dementia, to be more accurate, physically there isn't that much to see at all. It's all down a microscope.
It's not just my untrained eye. We have to give this grey matter some colour, literally. Reveal the damage with dye.
We use special techniques to show up proteins in the brain. The stain we're using to show this abnormal protein up stains things brown. Protein appearing in the brain is abnormal and is associated with people with dementia, in that somebody who has no dementia has none of this protein. You see that hole in the middle, that's a
Clear
blood
hole,
vessel. Yeah, that clear hole is a blood vessel. How we can spot it as CTE is the way that the protein clusters around blood vessels like that. It's so badly damaged that the structure of the brain has begun to disintegrate on it.
So you think that is down to him playing football?
It's all, the only thing we can say that links the cases that we've been seeing is exposure to brain injury. What we can't do is say exactly which part of the activity it was.
Yeah.
You know, and the question people ask is it heading. We can't say that.
Because how do you know that it's not because he was heading the back of someone's head, or he had 3 or 4 elbows during a game, or
which is why I'm always very cautious when people say, try to say it's the heading in football, or it's the scrum in rugby, or football heading. We just don't have information on. We need to understand better what happens there to be able to work out what might be happening later on.
Okay. It's not that reassuring, because if the greater danger comes from more obvious shocks to the head, well, I may qualify on that score. It would be fair to say I was a pretty robust player who gave a few knocks and took a few. Even so, what I did was surely never like this. To say this leads to CTE, or especially this, doesn't come as any sort of surprise. But can CTE be caused by something as painless as heading? I need to find out more about precisely what happens inside a head that meets a football. Neuroscientist Dr. Michael Gray has a special interest in sport concussion assessment and rehabilitation.
To understand this, we have to start at the beginning. Football is the only sport where the head is used as an instrument to hit the ball. And so now we have to think about what potential damage is there. How is the brain actually protected? The brain is fixed at one point here, right about where my finger is in the brainstem here. And it sits within a fluid-filled bag, and that bag is then inside a hard skull. When the ball comes in contact with the head, what we frequently see in illustrations is this little red bit here, which would suggest that the damage is all occurring down here. And in fact, that's wrong. What we should pay attention to is the wobbling that goes on in the brain. Another way to look at this is with this little jelly mold here. So imagine this jelly mold here is a brain. And if I tap the side of the plate like this, you can see the brain is wobbling. And that's effectively what's happening when the ball hits the head. What's happening inside the brain is that the nerves are getting stretched quite rapidly, and that's causing some structural damage to the nerves. The question then is this dangerous? We can get concussions from a single heading of the ball if the force is strong enough, and this will be seen in symptoms such as seeing stars, such as getting a headache after heading the ball. That will lead to a concussion, and then we should be taking players off the pitch. That's different than the subconcussive injury, which is still creating some damage, but we don't actually know that anything has happened. So we don't see those stars, we don't get the headache, everything feels fine. Each and every time we head the ball and we get this little wobbling, if there is a little bit of damage, and we don't let the brain recover, we just keep back out there doing it again and again and again, that's probably not good for the brain.
There is clearly much more work to be done. Tiny changes within the brain are hard to detect. How extensive might this subconcussive damage be? What's easier to measure is the overall scale of the problem. There's 850,000 people in our country that are suffering from dementia. And there are a lot of footballers in those numbers. But the reality is, and the sad thing is, we don't know how many. And that can't be right. I'm going to meet one of them. Matt Tees played professional football in the 60s and 70s in Scotland and England. His strong point was heading the ball. Matt now suffers from dementia.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine.
I'm just admiring your gardens.
Oh,
they're beautiful. Lovely to meet you. How are you? Mate and Matt. Yes.
How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I just had 6 pins and a plate put in on my wrist because I fell off my cycle and.
Oh, crikey.
And you've just had your golden wedding anniversary.
Yeah,
That's 50, isn't
50
it?
years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
50 years.
I tell it that way.
She's put up with you for 50 years, has she?
Oh, thank
So life good? Life's hard?
Yes, life's very, very good days and bad days.
Yeah, I bet,
Good days and take them as they come.
Yeah.
We have a set routine that we must follow. Like what day is it? Well, you can see up there the days put up every day. Mark's quiet, he doesn't talk. He now doesn't know that this is his house.
That must be so difficult for you.
That's heartbreaking for me, Alan. I think I've learned to be very strong because I've had to be, and it's one of the few times I could have cried. We're into sort of the final stages, which could be 2 years, 10 years, nobody knows.
You say that with ease, as in you've totally accepted and...
I have to. We have to live with it, Alan, don't we? And it is our way of life.
So tell me who you used to play for and...
I played with Luton.
Luton, yeah.
And then I left Luton and I went to... What's that one?
You played in Scotland.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you come down to Grimsby.
Yeah.
And then you went to London, to Charlton Athletic.
Yeah. Centre half or centre forward?
Centre forward.
Goal scorer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a typical photograph of Matt. Up there and heading that ball.
That's some header.
And there's the happy goal scorer, Matt Tees.
Do you think there is a link to football?
I think there has to be. I've got no doubt about it, Alan. Without trying hard, I can name about 8 people Matt's played football in this area with that's had dementia or Alzheimer's. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean that speaks volumes in my opinion. My grandsons, 2 of them are really good footballers, and I went to watch the one in the blue shirt up there. Yeah. Honestly, I felt sick.
Really? That bad?
He plays sweeper and he's jumping up, heading them like this, and I just thought, oh, and my heart was going like this. I couldn't believe my reaction because I know what I know now.
Come on in, guys. Hello.
It's a joke.
Nice to meet you. How are you? How are you? Hello. Alan, hello. Nice to meet you. Left hand, I'm afraid. Hi guys, how are you? You're the centre half and you're the right back. So you both head the ball. Yeah. Do you take after your granddad and head the ball?
Supposedly.
Yeah, do you? Yeah.
They never saw me when I was at my best.
Does it worry you boys about heading the ball? No. You think about it?
It wouldn't. I don't really think about it, but if there is a link, like I wouldn't stop doing it.
And has Grandma told you what she thinks of football and heading and etc.?
Yeah, we've spoke about it like before.
Does that worry you?
A little bit, but obviously I don't think it has changed a bit because obviously when Grandpa used to do it, it'd have been like if it was wet, they'd level balls, they'd have been heavy. Whereas nowadays they're quite light.
Yeah. Do you think our authorities would be running away from this problem?
I've got 2 sons and 3 grandsons, and I want research. I don't want my daughter-in-laws and my grandchildren's partners and wives in the future to go through what we go through now. Life's quite frightening for Matt now.
Yeah. What struck me about seeing the Tees family, it wasn't just Matt that's suffering, it's me that has to carry everything. And the grandkids, it surprised me that they're so keen and wanting and willing to go out and head balls, despite seeing their granddad in the way he is and what their grandma has to deal with.
Are Matt's grandchildren putting themselves in harm's way by heading the ball? I'm returning to Scotland to see if science has the answer.
I did science at school. I did a lot of things at school, but other than football, I wasn't very good at school.
At the University of Stirling, studies are underway specific to heading a football. It's groundbreaking work in the UK, prompted by worries about old players.
We started getting reports of concerns of the effects of long-term heading in football. So we decided to set up a laboratory-controlled trial where we mimicked the effects of heading a ball in a training drill, as in a cross kick from a corner into the goal. But importantly, what we did, we put together psychology and physiology to look at the effects of this impact of the ball on their head.
Until quite recently, that was difficult to look almost inside the brain, what's going on. And now we have that technology from basic science, we can apply that and really start to understand what is the direct impact.
My guess would be it's not so much heading a football in a match, it's actually doing it in training.
Heading the ball once is not going to give you brain damage. And we're not talking about brain damage, we're talking about brain changes that are short-lived but repeated over and over again. And yes, we are most worried about the practice drills.
And how far have you come? What results have you had?
First time we tried it, it was very clear that there are immediate brain changes after hitting the ball.
The research they've been doing has focused on modern players, but first we're going to examine the leather footballs of Jeff and Matt's era.
A lot of the thought is that the older balls were heavier.
Had to have been, mustn't they?
But I'll be curious to find out what you think when you're heading the ball.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, ready?
Yeah. That actually feels lighter.
Good point. So when we weighed them, this was actually about 40 grams lighter than this one.
Right.
But the issue with these balls were the fact when they got wet and all the stitching got soaked and everything else. What we've done is actually soaked the ball in water for 2 hours. And what we'll do, we'll weigh it. So,
okay.
Because we weighed it beforehand, so just see if the weight has changed. So it's gained quite a bit of weight. That was 390 grams when we weighed it.
Right.
And that's now 595 grams. So you can see there is an issue with when the ball is wet, it would have weighed a lot more, no question.
Thankfully, I didn't have to head those big leather, brown, ugly, wet balls, which were incredibly heavy when wet. It seems to me the guys in the 60s and 70s got over a bit of a raw deal having to head those things.
I'm now going to do my bit to measure what happens when the ball I did play with meets my head. 19 players have been tested so far. Meet number 20. What precisely will be going on inside this head of mine when it goes back to doing its old job?
We're going to do a battery of tests to look at the effects of heading a football. First of all, we'll be doing a cognitive test.
What's a cognitive test?
The tests of reaction time and of memory.
What type of questions? I hope they're nice and easy ones.
Well, they start easy and they get more difficult.
Okay.
Brilliant. So in the first test, you'll see 6 white boxes, and they'll open up in a random order. There's going to be a pattern inside one of the boxes to start off with. You have to remember where the pattern is.
I'll be doing these tests before my headers and again afterwards, and we'll compare the results.
Oh, did I get it wrong?
You must have got one wrong.
Oh. I feel like I'm back at school now.
Yeah. Okay, so this time we're going to do the same thing, but there's going to be 3 patterns, so it does get progressive.
Here's where it gets interesting. Got it wrong again, haven't I? Hey.
Okay, so we're on to the second test. So this one is a test of your spatial working memory. Excellent. The next stage we're going to be using this press pad.
Okay. So am I a genius or what then? I thought we were going to be here all afternoon.
Okay, Alan, what we're going to do now is look at your balance.
Okay.
We want to see if that changes as a result of doing the heading.
If you want to stand on a balance board, try and keep this circle in the center of the screen. Okay, and step down. Perfect. Very good. So that's you done with the balance testing. So now we'll move next door.
What we're going to do now is a bit of a magnetic stimulation on the top of your brain, to see how your muscle responds.
So, if you want to give a couple of contractions.
Right, so you see that activity there?
Yes.
That's your brain instructing the muscle to contract, so it sends electrical impulses down to the muscle. So when you see these blue bits here, that's your electrical activity on the muscle. And we're going to be measuring what happens when we actually give a stimulus from the brain.
This is called transcranial magnetic stimulation. It works by placing this coil over your head.
So depending on where Tom stimulates, you'll see a twitch in a different muscle.
All right. We'll see a twitch, will we?
Yeah, we'll see a twitch. This measure looks at how easy the signal travels from your brain to the muscle.
And push up. Halfway there. And relax. Good. How does that feel?
Fine.
Okay.
That's the before test done. After I've headed the ball 20 times, we'll do the same tests again, and the team will compare before and after. Now, the bit in the middle. This is where it gets interesting.
Okay. Ready? And 3, 2, 1. Perfect. That's one.
Good header.
It's really good.
See, now I'm meant to run away with my arm in the air. Celebrate.
And 3, 2, 1.
Ah, missed that one.
Couple more.
Good header.
Very good. Last one. And 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Perfect.
Right, that's us.
You've successfully completed the heading protocol. Well done.
Cool.
So we'll take the headband off you.
Okay.
Go straight through, eh?
Yep, we go straight through.
Through the lab.
Yeah.
Yep.
See what damage it's done. I'll have a red head now. My hair used to cover it when I was playing. So what differences do you think you'll see here, if any?
Some changes in the way the brain communicates with the muscles. Maybe the impulses take a bit longer to get down or come a bit smaller.
Okay.
It's good. Keep it there, nice and steady. It's really good.
Can't say I enjoyed the jolts going through my skull that much. Balance test, the cognitive tests, and now we wait.
Okay, we've found some interesting results.
Good or bad?
Well,
I don't know how you found the cognitive testing. The results look quite similar to those we were finding in the study itself. You did better on the 8-item portion the first time round, and then you did worse than that the second time round.
we had no change in your balance.
Right.
If anything, a slight improvement, which we also found in the study, probably slightly to do with a learning effect. Magdalena will tell you a little bit about the brain changes we got.
Okay.
So remember that we stimulated your brain and we looked at the neural signal as it traveled from the brain to the muscle it controls.
Yeah.
And we do find in you what we also found in the study. So the blue line is your first time before heading the ball.
Right.
And you see the stim, that big peak at the start.
Yeah.
And then you see silence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it starts squibbling again. And then you can see in the red graph underneath that, after hitting the ball, that period is longer. That
Right.
means there's higher levels of inhibition
Okay.
in the brain.
Right, which means?
So really what we're seeing here, after hitting the ball, is a disruption of the normal brain chemistry.
If I came in here and looked at the graph, I would say it looked pretty similar. But there is a difference, as in it is a little bit slower, the second one, than it is the first one, which... But if you come to think of it, then heading a football at 20 or 25 miles per hour, 20 balls like I did in quick succession, then you would think it has to do something.
The arrow afterwards is slightly to the right. It takes longer to return to normal. And in an hour or two's time, we'd expect that to go back to normal. We don't know, because no research has been done, what happens when you head the ball 50 times or you do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. So the cumulative effects, we don't know how they add up. And the suspicion is that if you start looking at that, you might find more evidence for changes in brain health as a function of heading the ball.
I'm leaving Stirling, grateful that I didn't play with the old ball when it got wet, but slightly worried that heading any kind of ball causes changes to the brain. There's still work to be done.